For years, the top-tier Android phones have had one thing in common: Snapdragon processors. It's almost a given that at this point, if you're buying a flagship phone that isn't made by Apple, it'll have a Snapdragon 8 series chip inside, whether that be the most recent 8 Plus Gen 1, the previous 8 Gen 1, the 888 before that, or any other Snapdragon version with 8 at the beginning. So when ASUS announced the new top-level Android gaming phone that doesn't feature Qualcomm's platform inside, our interest was piqued. The latest ROG Phone 6D is seeking to offer even better performance than the ROG Phone 6, and doing it with MediaTek's flagship Dimensity 9000 Plus chipset instead. The D in 6D then stands for Dimensity, but could it also stand for disappointment, or dynamic, or daring? Or any other word you can think of beginning with D. I'm Cam Bunton from PocketLint, and this is our review of the ROG Phone 6D Ultimate Edition. Now, the ROG Phone is a very different experience to your standard smartphone, and that starts with the unboxing experience, which really feels like an event. The huge hexagonal box slides open to reveal a number of different compartments and sections. The phone sits at the top, and there's a ROG card sat inside the lid, and we'll get to that a bit later because that's part of the experience. In that same compartment is where you'll find the external fan called the Aero Active Cooler that clips on the back of the 6D Ultimate. Inside the main compartment is the ROG SIM ejector tool and a fairly basic case, and the 65-watt fast charger with USB-C output. But that's not all. Like previous phones, there's an AR experience as part of the unboxing. That's where the card comes in. You point the camera at the card and you get this virtual experience load up on the phone's display. Here you go through the basics of using the trigger buttons on the side of the phone and some of the phone's extras and set yourself up a little avatar. Now, on the whole, the ROG Phone 6D bears something of a resemblance to its predecessor, the ROG Phone 6. It's a big, bulky device which measures comfortably taller and thicker than even the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's not one for easy one-handed use then, and takes up considerable space in the pocket. ASUS tries to alleviate that heft somewhat with curves in the glass on the rear panel, so that it feels at least slightly comfortable. But it's clear from a number of factors that it's primarily designed to be used with two hands in landscape mode. The fact that there's a bit more bezel on the top and the bottom of the display, giving you space for your thumbs to rest, is an indicator. But also the layout of the internals, which you don't see. ASUS has placed the chipset or motherboard right in the center of the phone, so that when it gets warm you're not likely to feel it or touch the hottest part of the device while you're gaming or consuming media. The battery is split in two with one half placed on each side of that processor. Now, there are a couple of design elements that differentiate the 6D Ultimate from the regular ROG Phone 6 and 6D. One of those is the small secondary color display on the back, which displays animations, graphics, and icons for various purposes. It's something we saw in previous Pro models of the phone too. You can customize what it does in different scenarios using the Armoury Crate app. It can animate when you get notifications while you're playing games, charging the phone, or if the screen is just on. And each of those scenarios has different options to choose from. It's a pretty cool, but obviously not essential feature. The other element is one that's easy to miss, and it's called the Aero Active Portal. This is a small mechanized channel that opens up automatically when you attach the Aero Active cooling fan that ships with the phone. With this channel open, the fan can blow cold air right into the body of the phone, while also dissipating heat from the rear glass as normal, keeping the device at tip-top performance for long periods. Without testing it regularly for 2 years or so, there's no real way to know how durable this mechanism is. However, it has been built with a fail-safe in that it will automatically shut if the accelerometers detect the phone falling. This is similar to how pop-up cameras on certain phones used to behave in the past when those were popular. Moving on to display and media, and as we've noted in previous ROG Phone reviews, what makes this a great gaming phone also makes it a great phone for consuming media on. It's got a big, bright, colourful display flanked by two powerful and full stereo speakers. In a world where most phones have fairly good stereo speakers nowadays, it stands out more than any other feature when a phone delivers loud, balanced and bass-filled audio from both sides of the screen. Behind both speakers is a 12x19mm driver, and each has its own amplifier powering the sound. So whether you're heads down in your favourite game and blasting the sound effects at high volumes, or watching YouTube videos and cranking up a playlist, there probably isn't another single phone that produces the sound that comes from the ROG Phone 6D, except maybe the ROG Phone 6. Add to that the 3.5mm port for wired headphones and support for LDAC, and you have a very capable machine for delivering sound. We have no complaints about the display either. It's a big panel with just enough sharpness to deliver crisp and detailed pictures. It's also very colourful, dynamic, and has enough brightness to be visible even outdoors in bright daylight. What's more, it's a sensible aspect ratio, and that makes it ideal for videos and games, and is completely flat. so there's no distorting towards the edges and it's easy to type on. With HDR10+ support, it'll also deliver video from your favorite streaming services with lots of contrast and great peak brightness. Refresh rates can reach a peak of up to 165 Hz too, which for most apps and services is overkill. But it does mean that interface scrolling and games with higher refresh capabilities are well catered for. Now, as we noted in our written ROG Phone 6 review, the Snapdragon version of this phone performs really well, so we were curious to see if there were any real tangible differences when switching to the MediaTek version. The truth, unless you dig down into numbers and look at it from a purely technical or numbers point of view, is you probably won't see much difference, because they're both excellent. For those who want some numbers, the Geekbench results show our unit as having a single core score of 1400 and a multi-core score of 4389. Technically then, the MediaTek Dimensity 9000 Plus is slightly higher scoring than the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, but in day-to-day gaming you probably wouldn't notice it. Still, the positive side of this is that you'll get really top-tier levels of performance in your favourite games from the ROG Phone 6D. We played a lot of Genshin Impact with the display settings set to their maximum and found that it reliably stayed around 60 frames per second pretty much the entire time, even as the internal core temperature started to get a little warmer. Without the Aero active cooling fan attached, we'd see internal temperatures creep above 40 degrees Celsius, and the frame rate dropped momentarily to 55 frames per second. That's pretty good going, and while the body of the phone did get a little warm, it never felt particularly hot in a specific zone, so it was never uncomfortable. With the fan clipped on, the performance was flawless, never dropping below 60 frames per second and the temperature never reading higher than about 38 degrees. That's essentially body temperature. There are a couple of other added bonuses of using the fan too. Firstly, it has built-in buttons which you can map to different functions in different game titles. It's ideal for games like Genshin where you have multiple on-screen buttons to tap. You can have the 4 additional buttons each programmed to activate those frequently used controls like jumping, sprinting and attacking. This then keeps your thumbs free to just move around and control your direction. You can of course use the touch-sensitive shoulder buttons as well. The second benefit is that the cooling fan also acts as a stand, so if you want to, you can connect your wireless console controller to your phone and have the phone standing up, using it without touching the display at all, if your game supports Xbox or PlayStation controllers, that is. All of this power, speed and versatility is backed up by a huge 6000 mAh battery as well, making it one of the most capacious smartphone batteries on the market. As mentioned, that battery splits into 2 cells and means Asus has been able to enable its fast 65-watt charging too, so just 30 minutes plugged in is enough to almost refill the entire battery. Not that it needs refilling tremendously often. Even with 2 or 3 hours of intense gaming during a day, we didn't manage to completely drain it, even with extra power going to the exterior cooling fan. So under load then, it does well with its battery consumption, its thermal performance and its general overall speediness, ensuring this truly is an all-day, everyday great phone. Now, with high-end gaming phones, we often find there's one area that's a little bit of a compromise, and that's cameras. This is perhaps the one area where the ROG Phone 6D Ultimate doesn't really compete with the big names like Samsung and Apple, but it's to be expected, and even here things aren't terrible. The main 50 megapixel sensor is the same one that's in the previous ROG Phone 6, the Zenfone 9, and the Oppo Find X5 Pro among many others. It's a good sensor and performs well in well-lit conditions, delivering colourful and dynamic shots outdoors in bright daylight. Colours are generally boosted, but not to an aggressively hyper-real level. They give images pop, which makes them ideal for modern tastes. And it's joined by the ultra-wide camera, which again is perfectly adequate for shots in daylight, outdoors, but struggles a little when light levels drop, delivering colours that aren't quite as rich. Now, there's no telephoto zoom here. Instead, we get a low-resolution macro lens, which is fine as low-resolution macro lenses go, but still doesn't quite compare to the other 2 lenses. So what makes the ROG Phone 6D Ultimate Edition special in the end is the same as what makes any other ROG phone special: the multimedia experience. It's big and bold, but with its large, excellent display combined with the best stereo speakers we've ever heard on a phone, it's just fantastic for gaming and consuming media on. Our big takeaway from this experience is what it says about MediaTek. Having one of its Dimensity processors powering a phone seen as the gaming phone, a device that represents the pinnacle of phone performance, should do wonderful things for the brand's ever-evolving image. Having benchmark scores higher than the dominant smartphone platform can't hurt its image either. So let me know what you think of the 6D Ultimate Edition. Will you be going for this one or the 8 Plus Gen 1 powered 6 Pro? Let me know in the comments, or you can grab me on Twitter. I'm @CamBunton, and if you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up. It helps us a great deal. Subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. And I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.